State Champs, Michigan's Hangtime is presented by Lawrence Technological University. Visit ltuathletics.com and recruit yourself. Hangtime is also brought to you by the Michigan High School Athletic Association, promoting the value and values of educational athletics. The Michigan Army National Guard, a proud partner of the MHSAA. The Detroit Athletic Club Foundation's Athlete of the Year Awards. Applications being accepted now through March 6, 2023 for the male and female high school Athletes of the Year. Check out previous winners and download the application today at dacathleteoftheyear.com. And the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. Find out more at bcam.org.
What's up, everybody? Welcome inside the State Champs Sports Network studios. It is time once again to re-kick off the Hangtime season here on State Champs. My name is Lorne Plant. Welcome to Hangtime. Scott Burnstein, TJ Kelley in the house, and they will be all season long. We're so excited to start talking about the season. We had kind of a preview show, but there's been a lot of basketball since the last time we met, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff that has taken place recently. But first off, this really is what high school basketball is all about. These are the moments that you live for. Kevin, roll the tape. That's what I'm talking about. 68-65. Canton beats Salem at the buzzer. That one from way
Yeah,
down
he is
south.
the OS, the operating system in the KLAA. One of the most underrated playmakers in Metro Detroit. He's headed to Lake Superior State. Omar Suleiman, congratulations. That was quite a highlight.
I'll tell you what, Jim Reddy has quite a little bit of talent, and let's say this, not quite a little bit, but quite a lot of bit of talent in that front court. You talk about Dante Favors, Suleiman, they've got enough players where they can go out there and they can, let's say this, disrupt some things when it comes in the playoffs. And yeah, I think that they're going to be running the KLA.
All right, well, we've got a lot to talk about today and not a lot of time to do it. So let's get into it. Again, it's great to be back with everyone and you, the high school basketball fans here. Let's talk a little bit about the Roundball Classic. That's what we, we're focused on during the holiday break. We covered over 6 games, some of the games that you can watch it again. When you want to see and revisit some of the clips and things that we do here on State Champs Instagram, IG is the best place to go. We've got clips of all those affairs, the games we covered. Port Huron Northern beat Skyline 65-62. Brother Rice beat Grand Blanc 56-45. It was Orchard Lake St. Mary's over Ferndale 54-39. And we had Catholic Central beating E-Course 63-49. Those are the games that we covered. And again, go to Instagram to check out those highlights. But your thoughts on any or some of those games?
Well, I'll let you know, we just saw Suleiman hit that game-winning jumper. Well, Tyler Jamison from Port Huron Northern did the same thing to beat Ann Arbor Skyline from the top of the key. Beautiful play set up, throwing the ball from the baseline, 3 seconds on the clock, he knocks it down, and boom, there you go, that's the game. But again, that's what high school basketball is about. And then you also look at some of the other games that went into this. Warren De La Salle beating, Grand Rapids Catholic Central beating Warren De La Salle. That was maybe kind of unexpected, saying that Grand Rapids Catholic Central started the season off 0-3, but then really came through.
Got KK Brown, baby. That's prime time.
Yes, and he was very dominant, the Wright State commit. And you look at the Roundball over 4 days, we had 28 games. Phenomenal from beginning to end. And I would say that it was been one of the best round balls, perhaps since 2012 when we had Derek Walton versus James Young and all those other, you have Kay Felder, tons of NBA players that were in that event, and so Josh Jackson. And so you look at some of that stuff, and I was really surprised that there were games were really tight, and I drew up the schedule. So
tip of the hat to TJ, who's one
Thank
of the people that's been putting this on for the last decade plus. And I mean, I remember when this event started, I was in high school. I believe I was either a junior or senior. So it goes back quite a ways, back into the 90s, and it's just kept on getting better, and they've kept on pushing the envelope. Better games, better matchup, better players, and we are where we are today, when that is I wouldn't just say the premier holiday basketball event in Michigan. I think you could say it's the premier holiday showcase event in the entire Midwest.
All right. Well, again, shout out to you. And we've got some more invitations and showcases coming up, so those are always super exciting. Let's move on to a big game that took place last Friday that we featured here on State Champs. And Warren De La Salle went into Brother Rice, beat them 38-34. The sophomore guard, Phoenix Glasnor, 16 to lead all scorers. As far as offensively, is he the best sophomore in the state?
I don't know.
His coach thinks so.
He's one of them.
Offensively.
He's one of them.
I'm not sure that he's number one even in the Catholic League because
we got Trey McKinney at Orchard Lake St. Mary's, who for my money, pound for pound, is the best player in the whole state, regardless of class.
And I tell you what, I'm going to bring up something right there. That sophomore class, we've got 2025 class.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You bring up Trey McKinney. Darius Acuff, Cheeks, over at Cass Tech, put on a show in the Motor City Roundball Classic. He's been phenomenal. He was phenomenal in, I think, Grand Rapids this past weekend, Saturday. But yeah, it's the Carmody Classic, I believe that's what it's called. But yes, we've got a lot of talent, and I love it when you can say, hey, Cheeks is the best. You can say that McKinney is the best. You can say that Glasner is the best because it only brings up the parity. And we talk about, I just went back to the 2013 class by bringing up some of those guys. And you look at that class and you're like, all right, you can't go wrong. You can say 6'5", 6 guys are number one. And I think that that's one other thing that makes high school basketball.
What are your thoughts on the defending state champs?
If you go to the game within the game with that Brother Rice De La Salle game, Rice had difficulty when De La Salle rolled out their big lineup. When they played Salaka with, I'm blanking on the junior's name.
I got you right here.
It's all right, keep going.
I think it's Nemeka. So Nemeka and Salaka in the middle gave that it's a big lineup at Brother Rice. They're all, over, between 6'3" and 6'5", but they don't have anybody that's 6'7", 6'8", like those two bigs at De La Salle, and they did a good job of neutralizing that big three with Brother Rice, Blackwell, Williams, Thomas. But I love this sophomore class for De La Salle, besides just Phoenix Glasner, who, by the way, I've nicknamed Hot Chocolate, because he's so sweet, he's so smooth, and he does it both on the hardwood and the gridiron. He's a integral part of that De La Salle.
Heck of a baseball player too.
Team. Yeah, 3 sports star. But they got Armani Portis, they got Braden Holder. They have a really good sophomore class. Holder's brother, Lyndon Holder, was a point guard a handful of years ago, and Braden's shooting. I think Braden's shooting like 45% from three-point range right now. Portis, I think he's got like 2 turnovers the whole season. So Glasner's getting the headlines, but don't sleep on those other sophomores in that on that De La Salle lineup.
True that.
Yeah, well, there you go. As we move into what's taking place this week, obviously we record on Wednesdays, so I know the show airs Friday. We record on Wednesdays. Tuesday had some good games, some stuff that you can watch on the State Champs. Instagram and Twitter's got some of the stuff, as well as some of our other platforms. Number 18, Flint beat, and we'll talk about rankings here. That's coming up in just a little bit. So when you hear these numbers, that is our first state rankings that were put out. And just so you know, and I'll reiterate this later in the show, State Champs is celebrating 20 years as an organization, and so we do our Super 20s. Those are our rankings this year. Everything is a top 20. So we did it in football, doing it now here in basketball. Number 18, Flint Beecher beat number 19, Flint Hamady, 80-71 on Tuesday. East Kentwood over Rockford, 53-51.
Shout out Mike Thomas.
There you go.
What a steal.
Yeah.
What a steal they've got on the bench, bringing him over from Grand Blanc, and they've got some nice players on the perimeter. Jamel Hatchett and I think it's Martavius Flakes, Frosty Flakes. So looking good.
Yeah, well, let's not forget
and Dearborn beat Fordson in overtime, 65-63.
Yep.
You go ahead.
Well, let's not forget about Humphrey Rembert, who just came back from La Lemure in Indiana, went to prep school after spending his first year in Michigan, and now he's at East Kentwood. And talk about a 6'8" junior from part of that 2024 class, which we've talked about in let's say this last year previously. And the future is very bright for Michigan basketball.
TJ for Dearborn mentioned a sophomore they got, Israel Anthony.
Israel Anthony, yes. Talk about, He looks like he should be a football player, but he comes from basketball lineage.
Okay.
His grandfather played with Campy Russell, Pontiac Central back in the day. I'm sure Tom.
Ralph Grubb.
I'm sure that Tom Negotian was around there somewhere.
Yeah.
But you know, it's one of those things where it's such a small basketball community
Yeah.
where you see things tied together. But Israel Anthony, talk about an athlete. As long as he keeps on improving his guard skills, he's a guy from that 2025 class that we should be adding to the list pretty soon.
You mentioned something I just want to get your quick thoughts on before we move on, and that is we saw a mass exodus to prep schools just a few years ago where it seemed like that was the avenue that players needed to go, or they felt they needed to go to get the exposure and maybe the competition that they wanted. You said this player came back from Lama. Are we seeing more of that? Like, number one, are players not as quick to head to the prep schools, and are we starting to see some migration back?
I'm not going to say that it's necessarily a fad, but yeah, there's an allure of like the shiny things and, oh wow, we can be on TV and you can do this. Yeah, there's some beautiful things that come along with that. But we've had Chuck Bailey that's just returned. Yeah. He's at Hamtramck, just committed to Evansville.
CB3.
Monday. But yeah, there are quite a few guys that let's say this. Like Josh
grass
Jackson
is not always greener on the other side.
It's not always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
When we have tons of great coaches, DJ Foster at
You were
Hamtramck.
saying about Josh Jackson.
Yes, and he goes to prep school, but you're talking about Miles Bridges, the same thing. Yeah. But those are elite players. You know, those guys played in the NBA. They were destined for the NBA since they were 15, 16 years old. And I think that that's a big difference. And not saying that, you know, I'm not trying to crash anybody's dreams or anything like that, but you talk about, you know, you come back and play for Mike Thomas. You know, he's developed guys since Kalamazoo Central days. Right. You talk about Devin Oliver. You're talking about Doug Anderson.
Right.
You know, hey, I just wish there was, if we had highlight videos,
social media back
when Doug Anderson was around.
Yeah, I know.
That guy was the best dunker I've ever seen.
The best in-game dunker, and even when he won the college basketball dunk contest, they went and asked him, and he was like, yeah, those are my in-game dunks. I've never seen anybody make all of their dunks during a dunk contest. Yeah. And he did it in about 45 seconds.
Effortless.
Let me make one comment. I think as an anecdote about a cautionary tale. You know, Chuck Bailey, CB3, came back recently. He's at Hamtramck, but he had went the prep school route. He had gone to Kanye West's prep school, Donda Academy, in California, and that imploded. We don't have to get into the Kanye West controversy, but when Kanye West's career imploded, his prep school imploded. So this was in October.
Right.
So these guys had been in school for 2 months, and then all of a sudden, everybody on that basketball team has to find a place to play this season.
So
it's not, what I'm saying is that these prep schools, sometimes a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. And you got to be careful where you're going. I mean, the La Luz and the Oak Hills and the IMGs and the Mount Verdes, those are, you know, established. But when you start, you know, some of these pop-up schools, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. And luckily for Bailey, he was able to come back and get a slot at Hamtramck, and he's playing gangbusters right now.
All right, well, thank you for that. You know, one of the partners that we are very proud to have, again, is the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan, BCAM, as it's called. One of the largest, if not the largest, and greatest organizations as far as a basketball coaches association in the country. So what we do each and every week is we get a chance to sit down and have a chalk talk with one of the coaches here in the great state of Michigan, and I had an opportunity to talk to Benton Harbor's coach, Cory Sterling, and that was this week's Chalk Talk. Here's a little bit from that conversation. You guys got to the state quarterfinals a year ago, and I think it was Grand Rapids Catholic Central, again, the nemesis stepping up. You always go back and forth with those guys. Such a great program, too. How has the season gone thus far? And I'd like to hear about some of the playmakers, you know, for your team this season.
Absolutely, yep. So we got a Division I player, Grant Gondrzik. He's been leading us this year. You know, we put him in a leadership role this year. He always been a natural scorer, but the last 3 games he had 30, 32, and then last night he had 33 points. So definitely a Mr. Basketball candidate. You know, he will play Division I basketball. We got Mateo Hobbs. We got a transfer from Atlanta, 6'6" kid named Brian Gillespie. He's been averaging a double-double for us lately too. So the guys been scrapping. They playing hard. We 5-1 so far. Got a big game against North Farmington this Saturday. So we looking forward to just, you know, clicking on all cylinders going into the playoffs. But we want to play a tough schedule. You know, being a small school, our enrollment down to 400 now, but we continue on to play some of the heavyweights.
All right, thank you so much, Coach Sterling, for joining us. That was a great conversation. And, you know, this is a guy who is loyal, Benton Harbor through and through, played there. We talked a little bit about the opportunity that he had when he helped be a part of Benton Harbor's trip to the finals in 1992 and 1993. Unfortunately, they couldn't get over the hump of Detroit Pershing in those ones, but he was a youngster on those teams, but an all-stater himself, 95. Graduate, and then, of course, went on to play some college basketball. He is getting set to celebrate his 200th win on Friday as head coach at Benton Harbor. So what are your thoughts about Coach Sterling and what he's been able to do at Benton Harbor?
The state champion.
Yeah.
You know, I meant to shout her around the world.
Yeah, Mr. Basketball.
Yeah, Scooby Johnson. You know, hitting that three over the outstretched arm of Marcus Bingham.
Yeah.
You know, and I think right there, that was what their first championship since 1955. I think they were.
Jet the Jet.
Yes, yeah, and so yes, and they've had a lot of success. You talk about Wilson Chandler winning Mr. Basketball, had an extensive NBA career. He's got his own event that's going on in Benton Harbor mid-February. I think February 12th or something like that. But yeah, it's let's say this, the day before the Super Bowl. But yes, but if anybody's got their calendar ready. But yeah, Cory Sterling dedicated to the Tigers, to Benton Harbor, and you talk about one of the smaller cities. You know, let's say this, you can say like Saginaw, you can say Flint, you could say Detroit, you could say Benton Harbor, Lansing, but yes, people in Benton Harbor truly love those games. And I tell you what, if you ever have the opportunity to go to Benton Harbor, the atmosphere is fantastic. It's unbeatable. I would say this, when Benton Harbor plays Stevensville Lakeshore, that's going to be a can't-miss game. Not only is Grant Gondrzik a Division I player, but then you look at super sophomore J.J. Freitas, who's playing for Lakeshore, and he is another player to watch. We've talked about, you know, before the show about all the sophomores, or even in this show, talked about all the sophomores in this state. But J.J. Freitas is definitely one to watch on the west side. So if you're ever going on a Chicago trip or something like that, and you're in Southwest Michigan, gotta stop over and see Stevensville Lakeshore as well as Benton Harbor.
Yeah, whatever college nails Grant Gondrzak's commitment down, they're going to get themselves a real steel diamond in the rough. His dad played in the NBA, played for Tarkanian at UNLV. Obviously, his sisters were all-time great girls basketball players on the west side of the state, maybe even, you know, in the history of the Mitten. So great bloodline. He's doing it under the radar, unlike his sisters that got a lot of headlines. Right. But Grant Gondrzak is just as much of a primetime playmaker as anyone in the state.
Yeah, you know, we kind of wrapped the conversation. We were talking a little bit about the year 2020 and what could have been. He felt that Scooby's senior year, that team had a real good shot at possibly winning a state championship. And there was so much great competition that season. We were only in the district finals when we shut down.
What about Isaiah Jackson, who's in the NBA now, killing it right now? He came back from a prep school and didn't get to finish his senior year because of COVID.
I know, and that was Imani Bates' sophomore year. They were trying to see if they could repeat. They had a big battle against Ann Arbor Huron in the district finals. I mentioned that, and who knows, Huron was on fire at that moment because they had just beaten Ypsilanti Lincoln to end the regular season. So anyway, that was a fun conversation. We thank Coach Sterling for being a part of that, so thank you very much. All right, we are going to move. Oh, and by the way, it's a home game this Friday against Niles Brandywine, so those of you who support Benton Harbor and you didn't know that he's playing for win number 200, this would be a great opportunity to go watch that game and support Coach and all that he has done there. So let's move into our coverage of our first top 20 rankings of the season. TJ Kelley has put those out. You can find them right now at statechampsnetwork.com. Just click on rankings and you'll see that, again, in honor of State Champs' 20th anniversary, we're doing top 20s across the board this season. And we've got a number one, and that is Muskegon.
The Big Reds, undefeated. Watching some of their victories about how they beat Rockford. They've got, let's say this, I think they play Grand Haven coming up. But yeah, Harrison Sorrell is another player to watch for Grand Haven as well. But I'm going to stick to the topic, and that's Muskegon. Talk about going for win number 400. He just got his 400th win. Talk about milestone wins, and that's Keith Guy. Again, another state champion. But yes, he has brought on a lot of success. Muskegon has two of the top guards in the state, and when you talk about why they're number one, high school basketball is built around strong guard play. And when you get
especially
talking
great
about
point guard.
Yes, and they've got two of the best, Anthony Sidner, and then you also have Jordan Briggs. Jordan Briggs is headed to Wayne State. Sidner's headed to Ferris State, where his dad also played, where Keith Yai also played. But yes, they've got the momentum. They're going to be in Detroit playing at Horatio Williams Freedom Games, which are at Ferndale High School this Saturday. So that is definitely much-watched basketball. And then if you even want to move on to number 2, Detroit Cass Tech is also playing there. We've mentioned Cheeks Acuff. He's coming into his own. You're talking about a point guard who's 6'3", athletic, can really get a lot of stuff done. Steve Hall, another state champion, 3-time state champion, also PSL champion as well.
Yeah, and they've got DEPSA coming up in the tournament, in the showcase. So that's going to be interesting. In fact, I'll give you real quick our top 10 just so everybody can hear it right off the bat. Muskegon, number 1, Cass Tech, number 2, Detroit Loyola, number 3. North Farmington 4, De La Salle 5, Rice 6, Grand Blanc 7, Warren, Michigan Collegiate, who's 5-1. They're 8. Orchard Lake St. Mary's at 9, and U of D Jesuit at number 10.
Dylan Grant is another guy. He's at Michigan Collegiate. You know, he could be a prep school guy, but
let's say this. Hopefully he doesn't leave. But you're talking about 6'8". Let's move on to like the Justin Tillman, the Isaiah Jackson, able to defend the rim, score around the basket. But I think that he's a better shooter than Isaiah Jackson and Justin Tillman. And as long as he keeps on developing, he's one of those players that you have to watch.
That's why Michigan Collegiate is a factor this year. I mean, they took out Orchard Lake St. Mary's, the defending Catholic League champions, and you know they're a really, really good basketball team.
James Scott is doing a great job as far as the head coach. I tell you what, when I did my rankings, I was like, all right, number 1, Muskegon. Cass Tech, going with them at number 2. Loyola, I'll tell you what, if they play any of the teams in the Catholic League Central, I'm talking about Orchard Lake St. Mary's, Brother Rice, Catholic Central, University of Detroit Jesuit, or Orchard Lake St. Mary's, none of those teams want to, if they were to play 3 games, I guarantee that Loyola is going to win 1 game. And they might win 2. And they are my number 1 team in Division III. Dennis Morey is doing a fantastic job. I brought up fantastic guard play, which you have to have if you're going to be one of the top teams. And that's also what the Bulldogs have there. When you're talking about the Martin, they're not brothers, but Deshaun Martin and Ryan Martin. Ryan Martin's good for 20 every game. And then you got Jotham Noweke, who's also one of those holding it down in the middle, underrated player in my opinion. And then you also have Amari Stevens. And you have their backcourt 4-year starters. And so you talk about all the talent, the depth, they've been there. And we talked about them last month when they kind of got railroaded out of the playoffs last year. Otherwise, I think that they might have been at the Breslin.
Yeah. TJ puts a lot of work into these rankings, so you know that it's coming from an educated area. This man sees more hoops than probably anyone. So again, these are Super 20s. So this is what we feel are the top 20 in the state right now. You can go check it out at statechampsnetwork.com. Just click on Ranking T, updates it weekly. So we'll get the updated rankings on Mondays, and I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those seasons where we're seeing a lot of change.
Yeah, the same thing what we did last year. You know, I mean, the Catholic League, it's almost like one of those things you flip a coin, and you talk about even the games that we saw Tuesday night, where you had, Orchard Lake St. Mary's beating De La Salle. You have De La Salle beating Brother Rice the week before. You have University of Detroit Jesuit taking Orchard Lake St. Mary's to overtime, which was a weird game.
In a game that got stopped on Friday night, had to be continued on Saturday
morning.
Saturday morning.
Like 10:30, 11 o'clock, you know. It was just
and it went into overtime.
That was the smallest crowd that I've seen in Orchard Lake St. Mary's since, you know, I'm trying to think, like the 20th century maybe, you know. Right. But yeah, it's
pre-Porret. It's in between Bob Shoemaker and Porret.
It's been a lot of fun to watch, and again, that's what high school basketball is about.
No doubt about it, and we appreciate you guys being here as we wrap up the show. We just want to talk a little bit about something which you can go out and check out. You want to see some high school basketball. Key games coming up this weekend, Scott. I know Lakeland and Milford and Bloomfield Hills and Lake Orion.
Yeah, I'm going to jump around to a couple leagues real quick. Out of the LVC, Milford is the class of that league right now, even though they took their first conference loss a couple days ago. They started out of the gate 7-0. Sam Lewis, you know, pound for pound, one of the best players in Metro Detroit, 6'5". He's headed, I'm sure at some point he'll land at a GLIAC. That's how good he is. He's going up against the Lakeland Eagles, and they have a really, really good Division II player too, in Andrew Turnquist. So that should be an interesting matchup. At Milford, also look for Luke Jacklick at point guard and Anthony Hutter, who's a fast rising big. Moving over to the OAA, Bloomfield Hills, another one of these sleeper specials. Noah Adamczak is a senior that could sneak his way into the Mr. Basketball talk. He's averaging over 30 a game right now, just explosive. Reminds me a little bit of what Spencer Littleson did at Rochester Adams at some point 8-9 years ago, where he wasn't really in the conversation for Mr. Basketball, but played so well in the first half of the year that he pushed his way into a finalist spot. So look for Noah Adamczak and that Bloomfield Hills squad. They're playing Lake Orion. Jose Andrade has stabilized that program. DJ Morrow is a guy to look for. And then I just want to finish off in the Catholic League. Orchard Lake St. Mary's is showing a lot of resolve, a lot of overcoming obstacles to keep their eye on the prize. The two sophomores that we talked about in our first episode that got cleared by the courts to play are now ineligible according to the MHSAA, and the court, the fight for their eligibility is going to go back into the court system. So we should see what happens with that. They played in the Roundball Classic, I believe, on the 26th, and then on the 27th they were ruled ineligible. Zip Hines and Jaden Savory. But St. Mary's has not let that deter them at all. They're playing great basketball right now, coming off of back-to-back wins in the Catholic League over De La Salle and U of D. Trey McKinney, best player in the state, as I've been touting, 37 points in that Jesuit game. They're playing Grand Blanc in the Ferndale Showcase this Saturday. Should be a great one.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's not sleep on Sherrod Barnes. And this is one of the things.
Another sophomore at St. Mary's.
Another sophomore at St. Mary's, yes. One of the things that I love seeing, one of the things that college coaches love seeing, is kids that play with energy, kids that defend, and kids that are great teammates. If you have those three qualities, you're pretty much going to work your way into their system. You're going to be making visits. And so it's not all about points. If you look about things that don't show up in the stat sheet, that's Sherrod Barnes. I know that Trey McKinney gets a lot of the limelight, which he definitely is deserving of. But you look at Sherrod Barnes, and I know that college coaches, I talk with them all the time, but they love his energy. They love what he brings to the
He's got a
table.
great basketball IQ, and
Great
he's
basketball
long
IQ. And
for a guard.
he's been around basketball his entire life. I mean, his older brother wound up playing at Ann Arbor Huron. His dad is always around. You talk about Waleed Samaha has been there, who is prep school.
Yeah.
Legacy Prep, which is going to start next year in the Ann
We'll have
Arbor
our
area.
own prep school.
We'll have our
Yeah.
own prep school. But yes, Sherrod Barnes is one of those guys as a sophomore who we'll start talking about him a little bit more. But
Shout out to Bugsy
he's another
Smith,
guy. Yeah.
Smythe, I
Bugsy
should
Smythe,
say,
yep.
At St. Mary's, the brother of Will Smythe, one of the best shooters the MHSA has ever seen. Yeah. His brother is following his footsteps. Over the holiday, he had a 7 triple game. So they call him Bugsy. Daniel Smythe, they call him Bugsy, and really like what I'm seeing him from the perimeter.
Just a few seconds left. What you're looking forward to most this weekend, games-wise?
Let's say this. The Martin Luther King weekend always brings up a ton of basketball. You have basketball at Ottawa Hills. You have basketball at Madison Heights, Bishop Foley. Of course, we brought up Horatio's event at Ferndale High School. I think
West Bloomfield's got an event on Monday?
Yep, West Bloomfield has an event. But yeah, a phenomenal. I mean, there's basketball all around the state. I think even Traverse City or Cadillac, they have their showcase this weekend. So yeah, it's all over the place. I think that I'm going to be here Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to go down to Dayton, watch Flying to the Hoop, which is a phenomenal event. You got national talent all around the world. Oh, not all around the world, but obviously just nationally. Yeah, but hopefully see some of our state champs brethren who are also covering Ohio down at the Flying to the Hoop. But yeah, the guys down there, they do a phenomenal job. If you ever have the chance, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, head down to Dayton. Depending on where you are, it's 3 hours south of the border. So if you're in Monroe, hey, might as well. It's a day trip. If you're in Cadillac, maybe a weekend trip.
We're going to have some of that Toledo talent into the Catholic League next year, right?
That's right.
Are they playing basketball or is it just football?
No, basketball.
So we're going to have
football,
like
yeah.
a half dozen Toledo teams. So we'll have that Ohio flavor into the mitten before you even know it.
So that would be like Toledo St. John's, Toledo DeSales, Toledo Central Catholic. And they, and all do a phenomenal job And I think that it's only going to add to what we have here in Michigan. And I'd like to say this, like Toledo is like one of those things where, it's, you know, one of those cities where it's stuck in the corner of Ohio and they don't get nearly as much praise.
It's more of a suburb of Detroit than it is of Cleveland.
Without a doubt. That's why I see all the Lions fans wearing their Lions gear down there. Even Michigan fans in Ohio. Can you believe it?
A lot of them.
Like University of Michigan fans.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
This is how the conversation goes. We go off on tangents. But yes, a lot of basketball to check out this weekend. We encourage you to do that. Scott, TJ, of course, always appreciate you being here. Check out the rankings. And if you want to watch the full interviews that I do with the coaches, you can watch Cory Sterling's interview on YouTube. We've got it on Facebook and also at the website, statechampsnetwork.com. You can watch the full interview. It was a really good conversation. He is a great guy, and we'll be doing that each and every week. So, gentlemen, thank you. We'll talk to you next week right here on Hangtime.
State Champs, Michigan's Hangtime is presented by Lawrence Technological University. Visit LTUathletics.com and recruit yourself. Hangtime is also brought to you by the Michigan High School Athletic Association, promoting the value and values of educational athletics. The Michigan Army National Guard, a proud partner of the MHSAA. The Detroit Athletic Club Foundation's Athlete of the Year Awards. Applications being accepted now through March 6, 2023 for the male and female high school athletes of the year. Check out previous winners and download the application today at dacathleteoftheyear.com. And the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. Find out more at bcam.org.